All right, it is the meat and potatoes, and goodness me, we've got a positive emergency edition here. Andy Blow, Precision Fuel and Hydration, welcome to the show once again, I should say.
Thanks, Matt. Good to be back again, this time from the other side of the pond. So we found a time that works for us both.
There you go. Yeah, we're well. I'm drinking my my morning tea. You're drinking your afternoon beer. So it sounds like it's perfect across all fronts. We wanted to put this together, and it is literally with thrown this show together over the last 24 hours because of the really exciting news that for over the course of the rest of this year, Precision Fuel and Hydration will be the on-course hydration facilitator for all Ironman and Ironman 70.3 events through Europe, including the Vinfast Ironman World Championships in Nice this coming year. Which is, firstly, congratulations! What a great addition to all of the races there. You must be excited.
Yeah, we are, Matt. I say this unreservedly in that the office is absolutely buzzing that we've managed to pull this one off, because like you, I've been involved in the sport of triathlon for several decades now, and you know, through thick and thin, for better or worse, Ironman has been the brand that inspired me wholeheartedly. You know, when I've got VHS tapes of Dave Scott and Mark Allen running down a Leahy Drive together that are virtually worn out because of how much I used to watch them. It was my main aim in triathlon in the late 90s, early 2000s was to get myself a ticket for Kona, which I managed to do in the end.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that was actually maybe, not especially poetically, but it was 20 years ago that I did Kona in 2004. And to think that if you'd have told me then that 20 years later, we'd be a brand partner of Ironman, I probably wouldn't have believed you. No.
Well, I'm going to ask you how it came about, but I want to give some context first for the listeners, because you guys, I think, are in your 13th year in business. Is that right?
We are, yeah. 2011 was when we started.
2011. So for 13 years. And when I think about yourself as a leader of the organization, but also just the broader Precision Fuel and Hydration company that you are, for the last 13 years, you've been wholly dedicated to not just developing products that are going to help athletes, but also boots on ground, helping athletes individually and collectively through education, where I think you've become, and most people agree this, one of the leading hydration resources as an organization in the world. And I know it's a huge passion of yours, and we've had you on the show. We've talked about it so many times. But I think what the athletes are getting out of this is not just a product off the shelf that's been thrown together and you've thrown some money at a sponsorship, etc. But for me as a coach, this is just a wonderful step for the athletes, and I want to unpack that. So I guess first, just summary: how did all this come about? It's a little bit out of the blue for me. Let's call it this. So how did you end up in this position?
It's a bit out of the blue for us, to be totally honest with you, Matt. You know, we didn't get out of bed on 1st of January this year and think we're doing a deal with Ironman this year. We've seen the value in, you know, a lot of our customers are Ironman athletes or triathletes in general. Although we spread across a lot of sports, we've kind of got that triathlon DNA from my background, and that's always meant that a high proportion of athletes are doing swim, bike, run. We've regularly turned up at Ironman events, either in an official or an unofficial capacity in the past. So we've often bought expo space at Ironman events and exhibited and had a good response. And we actually went to the Nice World Championships last year because it was on our doorstep and we wanted to be there and support our athletes, and caused a minor kerfuffle, I suppose, in some ways, because although we were doing everything, you know, that we could rightfully do, you know, just by promoting our brand, it definitely ruffled the feathers of Ironman, I think, because we weren't an official sponsor, and we were quite loud and we were very there, shall we say, from a promotional perspective. And I think that we were probably already, if you like, on Ironman's radar already, but that cemented us as an up and coming brand, I suppose, in their eyes. And it was quite flattering to get a call a few weeks ago when, for whatever logistical reasons, Ironman needed some assistance in Europe with finding a partner to provide hydration products, and providing hydration products for several tens or even 100,000 athletes over 40-something races in a short space of time is quite a logistical challenge. And the first thing I did when I sort of got the call was I had to say to Sam and Johnny, who run our operational and logistical side of the business, and sort of said, well, just hypothetically, guys, if we needed to supply X amount of hydration tablets for Y amount of athletes over Z amount of months, could we do that, effectively? And when they came back and sort of said, well, actually, we think we could, it opened the door to them talking seriously to Ironman, saying, yeah, well, we think we can fulfill the logistical needs for this operation. So, okay, what does it look like for us to do this? And then, to Ironman's credit and to the credit of our team, everyone got their heads together very quickly, did a lot of problem solving, and managed to pull something together in literally a few weeks. That means that, now we're providing the hydration across the season for the rest of 2024.
Well, what we want to do is actually provide some really useful recommendations and advice of, here's the landscape of these Ironman and half Ironman races. Here's what's on course. Let's answer some questions around what it means as far as the hydration side, but also some first steps in how people can start to build their action plan to fuel and hydrate their journey really effectively. And so that's the crux of our conversation here. In order to kickstart that, I think we should go through some of the logistical side that I'm sure there are questions. When I first heard it, I thought, what are you going to do? You're going to give everyone a tube of tablets to give out? Are they going to have to pick up a tablet and throw it in their torpedo? So first, what's it going to look like? I know it's based around your orange tablets, so the 1,000 milligrams, but just give the listeners some insight into what this is actually going to look like on course practically. How are you going to deliver it? What are you offering, etc.?
Yeah, so the product that we're supplying, you're right, is the orange-coloured, not orange-flavoured, it's a citrus flavour, but orange-coloured tablet pack that we do, pH 1000, which has 1,000 milligrams of sodium per litre and is a low-calorie, like virtually zero-carb product, which we can get to in a minute. So it's for hydration purposes because we're the hydration partner. And that product is not going to be available in tablet form because tablet form is not much use to you when you're racing. You need a drink. So it's going to be mixed at the right concentration into barrels, and then that's going to be decanted into bike bottles on the bike. So as a competitor, you'll be handed bike bottles as you normally would from an aid station, bottles that will fit in your bottle cage. And so you can pick up bottles of pH 1000 during the bike ride, as well as water and I believe cola as well. And then you'll also be able to have water, pH 1000 and cola in cups on the run. So all pre-mixed product. So, easy to access basically when you're on the course.
So the easy way to think about it is, to summarize, is on the bike, water bottles that fit on your bike. That's always a question that I get. That is the effective replacement of the prior drink Gatorade, and we'll get to the calories in a second, but that's it. And then on the run, rather than grabbing a sort of the paper cup of Gatorade, it will be the 1,000 milligram solution mixed correctly already that you can just drink on course. Period.
Yeah,
so that's
it. Exactly that.
Okay, and then the calories that we'll get to in a second on the course, those are Morton gels and bars, fruit, salty chips, and all of that side of stuff. And we'll talk about that when we get to the action plan. Okay, super. So then the next thing to unpack, which of course is the deviation that we have here, is this drink, unlike Gatorade, that has actually quite a lot of calories. So in prior years, some people would be relying on Gatorade as a source of hydration, as well as a source of caloric replenishment. This precision hydration is effectively water and electrolytes only, with no or very, very low calories. And so can you go through a little bit of the potential benefit to athletes on that and some of the ramifications?
Yeah, definitely. And that is a big change for a lot of people to get their heads around. And I completely understand that. But when you're racing, as you know, we talk about this all the time, there's 3 levers you need to pull nutritionally: fluid, sodium, and carbohydrates. You can get all of those three things from traditional sports drinks like Gatorade that usually have about 5 to 7% carbohydrate and around about 500 milligrams of sodium per litre. They can be good, and they are a really good product normally for short distance events when you want everything in one bottle and you just need primarily carbs, but a little bit of fluid, a little bit of sodium. They work wonders on that. When you get into the longer races, I've always been my preferred route, if you like. The reason we came out with the pH line of low calorie tablets to start with was that separating your hydration intake, your fluid and sodium intake from your calories brings numerous advantages over the long distance. Because for example, on a very, very hot day, you need to drink more than you do on a cold day because you're sweating more. If you're getting most of your calories from your drink and you drink twice as much or 3 times as much as we sometimes see between the coldest and the hottest events, you don't need 3 times more calories. So you'll be overloading on calories or underdoing the calories at either extreme. There's only that kind of Goldilocks point in the middle if you're using an all-in-one drink. So by having a low calorie or close to 0 calorie electrolyte replacement drink as the primary drink, that enables you to control those two levers together, fluid and sodium, make sure that you can get adequately hydrated, and then you can worry about getting your calorie numbers in separately, usually via bars, gels. Maybe in some people's cases, the more sophisticated athletes might use a bottle of gel or a bottle of very, very strong premixed carbohydrate drink that they've taken on the bike with them from the start. But basically, you're sort of separating those two out. And I think that whilst there are other ways to skin a cat when it comes to your race nutrition, we do know athletes who do races entirely on liquid calories and that kind of thing. It's a higher risk strategy, and the safe way is to get fluid and electrolytes right and get your carbs in separately. So I think getting people to get their heads around that and understand what they can get from these different products is really, really important.
It's actually a little bit of a forced change, and change is always difficult for people, but it's a forced change to think about their fueling and hydration a little bit more strategically. And as a coach, everyone's going to have their preset, hopefully tested and practiced before in their training, but their preset caloric consumption, and I'm going to come back and sort of re-explain it through my coach's lens, and I'll represent this in grams per hour of carbohydrate, but someone might be taking in 60 grams per hour, 80 grams per hour, 100 grams at the high end, 120 at the extreme end, whatever their appropriate caloric intake is, and that stays constant. And then what you're saying there is relative to conditions and needs, you can throttle forward and back and respond on day your hydration and your electrolytes as well. So it creates that really open door flexibility sort of thing on that side.
That's exactly it. And then the other question that we've been getting allied to that is obviously we do pH 500, we do pH 1000, we do pH 1500, because within the hydration vertical, different people often respond better to different amounts of electrolytes. So 1,000 milligrams per litre, which is what's in the on-course drink, is relatively strong. That's about twice the sodium strength of a standard Gatorade. It's a little bit stronger than a Gatorade Endurance, which is about 800, just over 800 milligrams of sodium per litre. And people have been saying to us, well, what if I'm not a salty sweater, or I'm not a big sweater, and I don't need a lot of sodium? And the answer to that would be water is being given out on course as well. So you basically would take less frequent bottles of pH 1000 and more frequent bottles of water for your hydration. And then on the flip side, the question I would be asking as an athlete is, look, I'm a very heavy salty sweater. I'm losing well over 1,500 milligrams a litre. I need more actually than 1,000 per litre on average to get me through a hot Ironman in good shape. And the answer to that is that things like we do an electrolyte capsule, lots of other brands do as well. And knowing what you've got in your electrolyte capsules and taking additional ones to sort of fortify alongside the pH 1000 is the way to increase your intake. So that flexibility to fine tune your hydration intake still exists. And from the data that we've got, and you'll know this from the sweat testing that you guys have done at Purple Packs, the average sweat sodium loss in athletes is between sort of 900 and 1,000 milligrams per litre.
Exactly.
So hence we picked the pH 1000 as like the one on-course drink, because it does hit the middle of the bell curve quite nicely.